Have you ever wanted the ability to simply play sounds of crickets when someone makes a bad joke? What about when someone's taken too long to send a response or to answer a question? Or perhaps when something fails during a live demonstration? So stay tuned. I'm going to show you exactly how I've got that set up using a program known as Voicemeeter. Welcome back, guys, and all joking aside, Voicemeeter actually has several practical applications, much more so than simply playing crickets or losing bell when someone makes or cracks a bad joke, right? The reason I want to show you very briefly how to set up Voicemeeter is it's not that simple. Sure, you can figure it out through multiple trials and errors, but hopefully I'm going to save you guys some time on lessons that I've learned and how to dial your settings in where this actually works the way it's intended. And essentially a couple of other use cases that I have come up with and that I've actually used before, other than simply a soundboard, is if you need to have your computer's audio piped through as if it were a local microphone. And the use case behind that is those voice or those tones that you heard a moment ago, like the crickets for an example. If I play it now, you may be able to pick up some of that in the background, but you're not hearing it locally. You're hearing it through the Yeti microphone, which is right here out of the shot, picking it up through the desktop speakers, and it's coming back through the audio channel. Now, one of the great things about the Yeti microphones, as well as many other high-end microphones, is they've got background noise cancellation, echo cancellation, all these technologies that try to focus in on only your voice. So it does a really bad job of trying to pick that up. Now, that's also a good thing, because if you're using desktop speakers and you're on conference calls and webinars, that helps the other people not get the dreaded echo, right? I can't tell you how many times people have been on laptops, and the issue there is the laptop speaker and the microphone are in such close proximity of each other. Naturally, when someone else is speaking and those laptop speakers play their voice, that little cheap microphone on the laptop is simply going to pick it up and pipe it right back through, and you get that dreaded echo where you have to literally ask someone to go on mute or force them on mute. So that's one of the good things about having a nice microphone. You can still join webinars with your desktop speakers. Now, other use cases could be trainings, right? Let's say you've got a video that you want to play for your audience and you want them to hear the audio the way it's intended to be heard, nice and clear, without the muffled noise of it just playing on your end locally. So another example, and I've used this before, is with an OBS itself. And OBS is what I'm using right now, Open Broadcaster software, to record this video. And what's really cool about that is you can bring in multiple different sources and pipe them through OBS. So let's say you've got an audio track, a video track. Let's say you want to bring in someone via Skype. You've got NDI plugins now for not only OBS, but Skype now supports NDI, so you can bring in multiple inputs into OBS and have nice, clear audio options if you're trying to do a live stream or record a video like we're doing now. So let's get right to it. Let me show you a couple of the things that you'll need, some lessons that I've learned along the way, and how to dial in your settings. Okay, the first thing you need to do is, of course, open up a web browser, hop on over to vb-audio.com. A very quick Google search of Voicemeeter, and Voicemeeter is M-E-E-T-E-R, right? It's got two E's in Voicemeeter. It'll land you right on this page. Now, I can't speak to the Mac setup because I'm only using this on a PC, but I would venture a guess that it's very similar, but don't hold me to that. I don't have a Mac I can test on. So when you go to Voicemeeter, the first thing that you want to download is the virtual audio cable. Now, the virtual audio cable is crucial for this setup because essentially what that does is it allows whatever's playing through your desktop speakers to still play verbally, so you can still hear it like in your home office setup or on your laptop or whatever, but it also pipes it into Voicemeeter as an audio input. And that's critical because if there wasn't a way via this virtual cable to pipe that audio into Voicemeeter, you simply wouldn't get this local clarity that I'm talking about. It would be the muffled background sound. So download and install virtual cable. The second step is just download Voicemeeter. Now, there are several different variants of this. You've got what they call Banana, and you can see a screenshot of this. You also have the super complex Potato. No idea where they came up with these names, but you can see Potato is much more professional grade, a lot more inputs, but also a lot more complexity. So unless you're an audio guru, which I do not claim to be, I wouldn't venture down that road. I mean, you can go as far as getting into the V-band, and this is basically like a LAN, a WAN, a SAN style network, right? It's basically an audio network where you can have several different machines piping in audio, and we won't even go down that rabbit hole because that is much more high end than what I'm trying to solve with my use case. So just download Voicemeeter and install Voicemeeter. Okay. Now, once you get it installed, the very first thing that you have to do is open up Control Panel, all right, and then go to your sound settings. And quite honestly, guys, this one particular step is what took me so many trials and errors to finally figure out which settings would actually work and play that audio track as a local sound. And when I thought it was working and it wasn't working, I had to figure out, why is it this coming through as a local track? So I finally figured this out. So under your playback settings, find the cable input. Okay, so this will show up like a cable input. It's got a little graphic of what looks like a cable that you would have in an audio studio, right? Just make sure that you select this. And in my case, I've selected this as all my defaults. So communications default, local playback default, you'll see the green check mark for both. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, under recording, you'll want to go down and make sure Voicemeeter is specified as your output. Okay, so you've got virtual cable as your speaker, right? It's posing as your speakers. And then the Voicemeeter output is posing as your microphone. Okay, so those are two crucial steps if you ever expect this to work properly. All right, once you have that set up, it's time to head over to Voicemeeter itself, the program. So once you install it, let's get this on the screen. So let's talk through what some of these columns are. So the very first column, and you can see this dictated with a 1, this is going to be your actual microphone. Okay, so in my case, I literally labeled this Yeti. All you've got to do is, you can right click in here and that box is open, that in text field, you can label it whatever your mic is, just so you don't get confused later. I labeled this Yeti just to be an obvious, this is my Yeti mic, and you can see the levels going up as we're talking. The other important thing to note is see how we have an A channel and a B channel, okay? B is going to be the microphone input itself. A, which we'll get to momentarily, are actually your speakers, your physical speakers, whatever you're using. If it's USB speakers, if it's your internal laptop speakers. So the problem is, as you'll notice, if I click A, now you hear all kinds of echo and bad audio because it's basically taking what I'm saying and playing it back in a loop. So you'll want to make sure in the first column, you specify your physical microphone and make sure only B is selected. Okay, and the other thing to point out here is notice the gain. Everybody's environment's going to be different. I'm not going to make the assumption that I know exactly what your gain should be. I will tell you through a little bit of trial and error, -10 is where I have mine dialed in so that I don't get that echo. Now, if I leave this at 0, even as good as this Yeti mic is, sometimes on webinars, I've heard people say, hey, I can hear myself. And as soon as I mute me, it goes away. So I knew exactly what was happening. So I dialed the gain down to where that was no longer happening, yet obviously people can still hear me. And really, if you just look at the levels, so as I raise this up, obviously you can see the levels barely going into the red. That's too high. So again, I like going at -10. Anytime you want to enter in these options manually, just right click, it'll open the text box. and you can type in exactly what you want your setting to be. That's the same way across all the sliders that you can see. The last thing I'll mention while we're here in this first column is notice right here in the center where you've got voice, color panel, and then you've got low and high. Now what this actually does is it changes the sound on the fly of the way that you sound. So notice if I continue talking and I raise this up, you can tell that there's actually a change in my voice. If I go over to the center, it changes. If I come all the way down to the bottom, it changes. If I go into the right column, it's going to change. All the way to the left column, it's going to change. So the point is, my ideal setting that I have dialed in, and I've played with this quite a bit, is pretty much right smack in the middle of the lower left-hand quadrant. You know, and again, I can't say that this is going to be the same for everyone, but for me, this is a good mix of adding a little bit of extra bass to the audio track, just giving you a deeper sound, a more rich sound. But if you want this to be just dead even with no modifications, it will be that way by default when you first install it, and that's going to be at the dead center at the very bottom. So feel free to play with that. It can really help your audio clarity without having to do any post editing on your audio track, and that's really where I've found what I feel like sounds the best for my setup and in my room, because that's also going to matter. Okay, that's all the settings for the microphone. Moving to the next column, so column 2. This is going to be the virtual cable. Okay, so you want to make sure if you need to select this, and by the way, to select it, you simply click on the number and you'll need to select what your actual device is. So in this case, Yeti microphone. You want to try to do WDM. You get the best clarity. You also get the lowest latency. So make sure to select that if it's available. And then under 2, notice I did the same thing, WDM cable output. Okay, now let's talk about a couple things. Notice how right now I'm talking, you don't see anything showing up in column 2 because there's no computer audio being played. Okay, so if I go over here to one of my videos and I actually play this video, notice how now you actually see the bars going up and down, and that's just our intro here at Veeam. So you can see that the computer audio actually will show when it's being played in this second column, but not the microphone levels. Okay, so hopefully you're getting the idea. Column A, or this first section is only for the mic. The second section is only for the desktop sound. And then notice here in the third column, you actually have a Skype Teams input. And of course, I've actually selected this myself. I've typed it in. You can call it whatever you like. But the really cool thing here is, keep in mind, you have your desktop audio. And what I mean by that is, let me try to clarify, sounds that your computer is playing that are not someone speaking to you live, if that makes sense. So basically, when you're on a Skype, Teams, WebEx, whatever the case may be, if you're on one of those calls, based on the way that you set up your settings, and you'll want to make sure that you choose the actual Voicemeeter input, over on the actual Skype application, the WebEx application, whatever it may be. And you'll notice right below it, it even says VB Audio Voicemeeter. Okay, this will show up, and this will be what you select on your Skype application, Teams, Zoom, whatever the case is. And although I don't have this to show you right now with a live caller, you will see their feed and their levels showing up in that third column. Okay, they are not computer audio, which is really cool because you can separate what you play, like what you start, like if you go to a YouTube video and start playing, that's going to show up here in the second column. The third column is only going to be their voice. All right, finally, over on the right hand side, this is going to be hardware out. So when you choose A1, this is where you're actually choosing your actual desktop speakers, your real physical speakers. Again, WDM, my case, it's the Realtek USB 2.0 audio. Now that's where you set your physical speakers, and then this gain, this main slider here that says -16 decibels, that's the actual level or volume of your typical computer speakers. Now there's one or two other settings that I'll show you. If you go under menu you can actually select this checkbox that says hook your volume keys for the level output A1. So remember, right there is A1. We just talked about it. So once you lock that to your physical speakers, you can hook this so that when you choose, your volume up or down slider, let's say on your keyboard, if you click on the speaker icon or anything that you've got like shortcut macros to either increase or decrease volume, Voicemeeter will do that for you if you hook that. And basically what Voicemeeter will do, as you can see in the background, I'm actually raising and lowering my levels, and all that's doing is changing that gain or the level there. Okay, so that's hopefully a good summary so far. Let me try to summarize and clarify a couple things. Channel B is always your microphone, okay? The virtual cable is posing as your computer speakers, right? So that's why that's going to be channel A. Anytime channel A is involved, that's going to be something you hear. Anytime channel B is involved, that's going to be something you're pushing out to your audience, like your microphone, or like computer audio that you want to send to your audience. So why is that important? Because the magic happens with what I'm talking about right here in the second column. Because remember, right now, we have the virtual cable acting as our speakers. So if I were to play this again, okay, whereas before, you saw the levels move, just like now, if I repeat this, you see the levels move there in column B, under the audio of the computer, but you don't hear it on your end. You can see it visually, but you don't yet hear it. Now watch what happens when I play this and make sure the volume's up at 100 and I check this B channel in this second column. And just again for comparison, so if I hit play, you're going to hear it loud and clear. But notice as soon as I dechecked channel B, it went away as far as the audio is concerned. And that's exactly what happens. So it's basically you either check or decheck this B channel when and if you want your computer audio to be sent through your actual microphone input, which your audience will hear just as if it were your voice. Now, one or two other pro tips that I'll give you guys, if you are trying to play around with the Skype callers, the Teams, the Zoom, and you're trying to bring in those callers to do some sort of live stream where you've got multiple people talking, you will need to have a second set of some sort of earphones or earpieces or AirPods or whatever you choose to use, because the challenge is when you bring them in, if they are playing over your actual speakers, which keep in mind, they will be if channel A is selected. That's going to create a loop. So that's going to create the echo that we're talking about or we mentioned before. So an easy fix to that is for your local desktop speakers, like if you go down here to the speaker icon and you literally change this from that audio cable that we selected before. I just realized my face was in the way of this. Let me move myself up real quick. If you select this and literally change this audio cable and you put this on, let's say your AirPods, well then the actual desktop audio will then be going through your local AirPods. It won't be going through the desktop speakers, the real speakers. So that's one workaround if you're trying to do a live stream. And please make sure you do a test before you put a lot of time into trying to do a live stream, a video recording with multiple people all being channeled into OBS, because the last thing that you would want at the end of the day is to create that video, it have one audio track, but it have an echo the entire time, because there's not really anything you can do in post to fix that. Whereas if it were two tracks, you could simply nix one. So that's not going to be an option. So make sure that you test this out first. Now let me show you one other thing, and to show you this, I'm actually going to kick it over to the phone and do a little bit of footage there. Okay guys, so we just picked up where we left off with going through the OBS tutorial. You can see, my OBS setup over here. This was the side of the monitor we were working with. What I wanted to show you is what I personally have set up with my StreamDeck. And this is something I just set up today, and I think it is, I've had the StreamDeck for a while, but what I'm talking about I just set up today are these two buttons right down here. And let me show you exactly what I've done with this. And this is just a pro tip for those of you who happen to have StreamDecks. So, bear with me here. If I open up the StreamDeck application, let's close OBS momentarily and we'll try to zoom in. So the first one I want to show you is the mute. Because remember, once you go to using once you go to using Voicemeeter for your audio, it is going to be what you use to either mute or unmute your microphone, all right? Because remember, those are the settings that we chose. So you can't just hit mute without going into Voicemeeter, because again, Voicemeeter is a little bit complex, right? And I mean, we know it is because it's so powerful, but you have to know which channel to mute in order to mute everything. And I'll tell you again, I learned this from trial and error. If you just go over here to your microphone column and you hit mute, and you've played around and you've got channel B selected, and let's say you're on a webinar and you think you're muted, and you've got email open and your email reminder dings, or let's say you drift off and you open up a YouTube video real quick, your audience is going to hear that as if it were local because you're not muted. Your microphone is muted, but everything else in Voicemeeter is still very much live and being piped out to your audience. So with that said, let me show you what you have to do. So first off, if you want to do it manually, over here, the bottom right hand corner, you zoom in, notice how that says virtual out. So that is what needs to be muted before Voicemeeter as a whole program is muted. And remember, you're using that for everything. You're using it for your quote unquote speakers as well as your mic input, and it mixes all that together as your one single output going into your platform, whether it's Skype or Teams or Zoom or whatever. So that is the channel that has to be muted to assure that everything gets muted. Now the other thing that I set up just today is a way to turn this channel B on and off, right? Without having to do what I'm doing manually and clicking it, because sometimes, you know, if you're on a webinar, you want to stay off mute so that you can participate, especially if it's a smaller group. However, you don't want them to hear every time you get a Teams chime or a Skype chime, or you know, any type of messenger notification, or your email sends you a reminder and you're starting to get blasted with emails and Outlook is ding, ding, ding. You don't want them to hear that. So it's a nice option to be able to quickly toggle that on or off. So if you wanted to play some sort of audio that you want to make sure they hear, you can just turn that on, play it, then turn it off. So what I've done in StreamDeck, first, let me show you the mute. That's the bottom right icon. The first thing that you'll need to download is, if we go down just a little bit, you can see that there is a plugin essentially called Voicemeeter from Bar Raider. And you can find that by going under More Actions and searching for it. But once you have that installed, notice right there on the top, you've got Voicemeeter mute and unmute. So what I've done, toggle mode, bus, and this is going to be bus number 1, okay? You can see everything that I've got. You can do user-defined icons like I have here. And this is all you should have to do. Now, if you've mimicked my setup, you should be able to mimic these settings. But if not, do a little bit of trial and error, because if I can get this shot in, you may not be able to get everything. Maybe you can zoom in, but you'll see down here in the lower left-hand corner of this video, when I tap this, worst case scenario, you should at least be able to see that red dot turning on my PC screen, right? So that is muting and unmuting the actual feed. And you can even tell the bar, the actual gain and levels bar, completely goes away, picking up my background when it's muted, and now it's back. Okay, so that's mute. Now the other one, this icon, this one was a little bit more challenging to figure out. So once you get this dialed in, this is actually going to be your advanced toggle, is what this one is, right? So you drag your advanced toggle on. I never give mine names because I just like to look at the icon, and this is the settings that I've used. So strip1.b1 equals 1, and basically that's turning it on. Okay, now the one thing that I had to do a little bit of trial and error with, you have to enter in mode 1 check. Everything, just copy and paste what you put in above, but just take off the equals 1, okay? And then finally, under mode 2 key press, you're gonna do -0. And if you need a little bit of help with that, you can click on this and it'll give you some examples under more info. But I actually had to Google to find out exactly what I was trying to do, but it was real simple. Strip 1, that's strip bracket 1, close bracket, period, B1 equals 1. Then down here, you're basically having to plug in check that B1 to see if it's on or off, and then B.0 disables it. Okay, and then once again, you can set up your custom thumbnails if you like, and that's all you have to do. Now, what that one does, again, you can see down here, the second button, notice there on Voicemeeter on the right, how that's enabling and disabling channel B. Okay, so that is the shortcut. So hopefully this gives you just a few pointers on how you can get that tweaked if you happen to use StreamDeck with Voicemeeter. Hey guys, thanks for hanging with me. Just to close things out, one final thing that I want to share with you is some settings you want to make sure that you dial in whatever platform of choice you're using, like Skype, Teams, Zoom. If you go down to audio video, make sure that your audio is Voicemeeter on both your input and your output. So your microphone needs to show up as Voicemeeter, as do your speakers. Now, how that's going to work, if we actually do the test call, the echo and sound test that Skype provides for us, and we do a call.
Hello, welcome to Skype call testing service. After the beep, please record a message. Afterwards, your message will be played back to you.
Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. So there you go, you get the idea. I just wanted to show you that on the other end, as long as you get those settings dialed in, they will hear you the way that it's intended to work. So all your audio is piped through as that local input. So guys, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video if you found it useful, if it actually helped you set up Voicemeeter. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna be putting out more tutorials, more how-tos, hopefully more great content down the road. So thanks so much for stopping by. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your day.